And he wanted to meet so that we would have an opportunity to talk about the arts in our community, challenges, needs, ways we can make it better. And one thing that we found we had in common, which was a challenge, was reaching out to the teen population and young adults in our community. And in light of the unfortunate loss of, in recent years, of teens and young adults to substance abuse, we got to talking more about the healing qualities of the arts and its other benefits, how it can help bring people together. And we talked about possible ways to reach out to the young people in our community and beyond in terms of the arts, and wanted to try and create a dialogue so everyone could understand the importance that the arts serve to everyone.
Yeah, and so with that aspect of community in mind, and with the support of Meg Rodriguez, and had the idea to inquire of Heard in Mind, they would be interested in promoting this community conversation. And Ann Margules and Beth Gallos were more than interested. They wanted to help plan this event, which is just fantastic. So thus, we are here this evening. And the goal is for all of us to become more knowledgeable about the power of the arts and the ways that the arts can open paths to community life, creativity, education, greater self-awareness, and healing. We will hear of things tangible through experience and research. We likely will make new connections or build upon existing relationships with each other. And we hope you will find new ways this evening to share the power of the arts with those with whom you interact daily. So, thank you.
So we call this series a community conversation because we know that we have a phenomenal wealth of wisdom. That's a new word.
Yeah.
It's creative. Wisdom and experience in this community. And so tonight we've brought in a guest speaker, Dr. Rob Horowitz. But also we're going to have a panel conversation with two local RIE parents. We have RIE mom, Ann Holbrook, who is teaching improv in the middle school. We have RIE dad, Mark DeMassimo, who runs an inspiring agency in the city, doing amazing work and really understanding the powerful need for creativity in our kids. It's really one of the skills that 21st century kids need for careers, but they need for development, for all of those great things that Jason was sharing. So it's my privilege to introduce you guys. So I'll start with Dr. Horowitz. So Dr. Horowitz is a consultant to arts organizations, school districts, foundations. As part of a group of researchers, he investigated the impact of arts learning on several cognitive and social dimensions, such as creativity, personal expression, and school climate. He's conducted evaluations for organizations such as the Kennedy Center, the National Endowment for the Arts, and Carnegie Hall. No small feat there. He has written, lectured, conducted workshops on program evaluation, musical creativity, jazz improvisation, curriculum development, student assessment, partnership development, and arts education policy issues. We're so lucky you're here. I'm also going to introduce, should I just introduce the panelists now?
Yeah.
Is that easier? We'll do that now. Okay, so Mark DeMassimo is the chief of the DeMassimo Goldstein agency in the city. It's called an Inspiring Action Agency, and he founded in 1996. He's been a creative entrepreneur since his early years. He began his agency career working for the author of Direct Marketing Strategy, Planning, and Execution. Briefly an account exec, his creative work soon beat controls and broke all response records. I'm going to skip down a little bit because it's rather. He has worked for a who's who of top direct and integrated agencies on Madison Avenue, including BBDO, J. Walter Thompson, Chapman Direct Advertising, Deutsch and Kirschenbaum and Bond. He is the author of Digital at Speed, co-founder of the Tapping and Offlining movements, and this one really jumped out at me. He's on the board. He's the committee of the Partnership for Drug-Free Kids, which Heard in Rye has done some work with over. So you're such a great fit to be here tonight. He is a RIE dad, as I said. His wife Jill is not here yet, no. And he's got 3 kids: Max, Alex, and Chad. Em well as plays and musicals. She studied theater education at Emerson College. She's a credentialed teacher with over 25 years of experience working with all ages, from preschoolers to adults. Her mission in life is to spread the joy, spontaneity, and mindfulness of improv across North America, and we're so lucky to have her working with our middle school kids, a small group of 20 kids who are just finding the benefits of doing something completely different and fun. So I'm going to pass this Kim here. Oh, I get to introduce you too. I'm so sorry I didn't see you there. Kim is going to be moderating our panel tonight. So Kim is a self-avowed city gal, posing as a working wife and mother of she's the mom of 3 young sons living here in Rice. She holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Texas in communications and journalism and a master's in communications from Northwestern. She is the owner of the interior design company, Kim Burns Design. She spent 14 years in the corporate telecom world in Chicago and DC. She is a stand-up comedian. She's done some work here at the Wright Art Center doing the evening comedy nights here. She's a producer of comedy shows as well. She performs in clubs and venues throughout Westchester and New York City. She's also been known to give inspiring speeches to various groups, to the horror of many, apparently. She remains an active singer in random bands and is a club tennis aficionado.
What can't you do, Kim?
So Dr. Horowitz is going to speak first, and then we'll open it up to the panel. And really, we want this to be a conversation. And as you all know, a conversation is a back and forth. It's a dialogue to really push some ideas and see where this goes. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Everyone comfy? Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me, and looking forward to this. I'm hoping to hear from you and get your views. This talk's going to be fairly personal. It's going to be about my perspective on research and what I think I've learned from working in this area. And I didn't plan to do this as a career. I came to it very serendipitously. I did a number of other things. I was a professional musician for a long time, played guitar. I was a teacher on alternative high schools. And I ended up going into music education with an interest in research. So through all of that, I had a variety of experiences that came together. And when I finished and got my doctorate, I plunged into research and consulting. We were exchanging some bio information before, and one of my biggest learning experiences was I was thrown very quickly into designing a large $36 million grant in my 5-story walk-up apartment in New York City to restore arts education in New York City. And I did write those budgets, and I wrote the criteria, and I wrote the plans, and interviewed lots of people, and I learned a lot at that point about philanthropy. And after that, I worked on a large, which I'm going to talk about, a large grant from the G Fund and the MacArthur Foundation to look at the effects of arts education on children's development. And that was another big learning experience for me. And I was fortunate enough to be in charge of that and manage that process, and again, learned a whole lot about research and about running that kind of study. And we came up with some significant findings. I mean, to my surprise, again, I'm working in my walk-up apartment on this data analysis, and it culminated, I got invited to the White House, actually, which will never happen again.
That's almost sad.
There was a concert, and they invited the researchers. It was very heady. So all of this was great. I mean, basically what I'm saying here overall is I was a freelance researcher. And I was making my way as a freelancer, almost in an entrepreneurial way, looking for grants, putting things together, learning things, and getting opportunities where I could investigate findings and help put programs together. After that big study, which is now pretty 17 years ago, I launched my own consulting business, and we did at least 100 program evaluations of all kinds of organizations, including community arts centers, but also school districts, arts organizations of various kinds. So it's all been really interesting, but I tend to look at everything as one big project, even though I work for a lot of different clients, and they often say, how are we unique? And they are unique in many ways, and they're often very good, but they're actually pretty similar in a lot of ways too sometimes. And some of the findings are similar. So I just want to talk about that. It's important for us to think about why we should have arts education for young people. And it's important to think about why we should have them in the public schools, why we should have them in community centers. What is different about the arts that from other areas? Why not pursue other endeavors? There's a lot of opportunities. It's very hard to pin kids down into one thing. There's so many distractions right now. There's also a lot of public policy distractions. So if we watch the news, there's very little conversation about education, really. There's a conversation about a lot of other things. And most of the conversation that there is about education is structural. What I think of as structural. It's about, should we have charter schools or not? Should we have teacher tenure or not? Should we have high stakes testing or not? Etc. There's a bunch of those things. There's discussion about levels of funding, class size. But if you notice, there's very little conversation about what happens in that classroom, which is surprising because it's mandatory, for one thing, and because we're all entrusting our children to this process. So they have to go. Well, I guess there are alternatives, but it's not that easy. And parents, and particularly those who aren't so fortunate, are entrusting the public to do well by those children. So there's some opportunities for them, some social mobility, some chances to succeed. Every parent wants this, but there's very little public discussion about what's going to happen in that 6 or 8 hours. So one of the things that we did when we started approaching that large grant, so it has this kind of highfalutin name, Champions of Change. So if you do look on the internet, the G Fund and MacArthur Foundation funded several groups of researchers. There were some from Harvard Project Zero, Lafayette Teachers College, Columbia, and there was some from Stanford and some others. And we each got a grant to look at ways that the arts help children. And ours, we were the biggest, which was nice, and we also were able to look purely at the question of how arts help children develop, not trying to answer the question, is this program better than that program? So we could start to get at the idea of why have the arts in the classroom, and why as opposed to other things. When in a situation with a certain amount of resources and a certain amount of time, a case has to be made for why that's important. Now, in that study, we tested 3,000 kids in measures of creativity and self-concept. We reconstructed their arts background. We did a whole lot of things which I'm not going to have time to discuss, actually. But what we found is that the children who had the most arts scored significantly higher in measures of creativity, broken down into topics like elaborative thinking, which is the ability to think in detail and to find multiple solutions to problems, originality, finding different solutions to problems, some of those other dimensions. They scored significantly higher in measures of self-concept and self-confidence, and how they felt about their success in school and their peer relations. And they scored higher in our measures of risk-taking and collaborative skills. So we found a number of areas where children were succeeding in what we concluded were 3 dimensions: cognitive skills, social skills, and what we call personal skills. So, and I'm just going to talk a minute about those. So what children were being able to do through the arts experiences was some of those measures of creativity: think differently, find multiple solutions to problems, apply their imagination. Now, this isn't a surprise. You would think, okay, that's common sense, but we were able to, using statistical methods, demonstrate this without a doubt, and found similarly that kids, besides exercising their imagination, were succeeding in areas where they were starting to work together in new ways. So children had improved peer relations. They had improved relationships with their teachers. They interacted more. And they have an improved, what we call self-concept, perception of themselves. We wrestled a long time with ideas of, when we'd interview teachers, they said, oh, their self-esteem went up. And we try to burrow underneath that with the data. And we concluded, looking at the test data and looking at our interview and qualitative data overall, that what teachers and others meant by self-esteem was a kind of confidence and self-efficacy, because the children had learned to do something, and do something that was important to them, and then demonstrate that ability before the school community. So there's these multiple parts for what's happening in the arts. That not only are children developing those cognitive skills and those social dimensions, but they're putting ideas together, a way to organize their emotions, organize their thoughts, build them into a performance, and then demonstrate that to the school community. And that takes a kind of an act of courage, where what we called risk-taking connected to that idea of self-confidence, where the arts seem to uniquely be able to apply that opportunity to take risks and to collaborate and work with people in different ways. We were even talking a little about that before upstairs, this idea that, because we all, in our own ways, we all struggle with that in the arts, of how to present and work with others. Now, these were great findings, and they went a long way. They got a certain attention, and one of the things we were really excited about at the time, there was a lot of growing tension in the arts education community and the research community about what kind of research should be done and what are the outcomes. The debate was, should the arts be taught for what they called instrumental outcomes? That is, should the arts be taught to accomplish something else, like raise test scores? Or should they be taught for their own sake, for the inherent value of the arts? We believed through this study that we were kind of transcending that debate. That in fact, we weren't saying that arts are raising academic scores. There's no magical increase in scores. But there are ways that the arts can set the conditions for improvement. So in fact, there are things that the arts are doing that are inherent to the arts for their own sake. They're inherent capacities, like those cognitive, social, and personal skills. But they are, in fact, useful in other contexts, whether it's academic, career, or life. And that is so consistent with all our other work and all our other research. The arts do these things, but they also can apply in other areas. And I've interviewed, it must be thousands, it seems like I've been doing this for 20 years, and with people working with me, what did the arts do for you, what happened? Did a large study in Utah. We interviewed hundreds of dancers. There's a lot of dance in Utah, in case you don't know. It's a real thriving center, supported by the culture of the Mormon church. This I did not know. There's modern dance, ballroom dance, creative dance, a lot of dance companies, and it's thriving. And I talked to a lot of adults there and said, this is what changed my life. This is why I can go on stage. This is why I can talk. This has helped me in my career. This has helped my confidence, et cetera, et cetera. So I was thinking about this, and I've talked about this before, obviously. Is this unique to the arts? That starts to be a question. Okay, so it comes back to, well, how do we spend our money and how do we spend our resources? Why have it in school? What's important about this place? And why not sports? Okay, sports teach some of the things we've said about the arts, sticking with it, grit, task persistence, focus, discipline. Those are things we found that I didn't get into. There's some creativity, ways of thinking quickly and negotiating situations, has that kinesthetic ability. There's self-confidence. There's actually quite a bit. So someone who's advocating for sports, for physical education, could come back with that and say, well, that does that too. So why not fund another sports facility? So here's my answer. For one thing, the short answer is, for some kids, yeah, it is sports. There's different children have different things that engage them. That is true. And for some kids, it's arts. And for some kids, it might be sports. Some kids, it's academics. There's a range of things. But the arts are unique in this way, and there is nothing else that does it. Because with the arts, you have the expression. And with the arts, when you're engaged in the arts, you're organizing your ideas and your emotions, and you're putting that in the service of some kind of expression, whether it's a visual art installation or exhibit or something you're doing for yourself, or whether it's a performing arts medium like dance or drama or music. And it's something personal about you. Sports has the collaboration, and there's often reflections of that individuality. But the arts, the individuality is inherent, and those ideas are inherent to that. So I think that is my basic answer. There's nothing like what the arts can do. In fact, we could make the case here that the arts are the most important academic subject, in that they're engaging the cognitive, affective, and kinesthetic domains. They're engaging what we call the cognitive, social, and personal dimensions. They're inherently valuable and useful widely in many ways. There's no other subject that does as much. And before I wrap this up, I don't know about the timing.
Keep going.
Keep going? A little bit longer. We're going to open it up in a minute. But I think this collaborative social dimension is very, very important, and especially when we talk about a community arts center. And again, for those kids, and this is a particularly, there's a few social phenomena we're all really familiar. The news is crazy, and nothing about education meaningful we're not going to see it on TV. But there's very little intelligent public policy discussion about the things I'm talking about here, even though they're important to all of us and they require public funding or philanthropical funding. But the other thing is the alienation. There's rampant alienation, part of technology, part of the Industrial Revolution. It's been growing for a long time. But we all are wrestling with how do we relate to technology? How do we relate to our gadgets? And what are our kids going to grow up with? So we have the social media. That is a way people stay connected. But I would just say, and that's valuable, but I would say there is nothing like an artistic experience for collaboration. I know I learned a whole lot growing up playing in rock bands, and as a teenager, and trying to figure that out and negotiate within that space. And kids need a place to go to engage in that with other people and to build those connections. People need a connection beyond the screen, beyond their immediate group of friends. They can make new friends, they make new contacts among common interests. It's incredibly valuable. And I should say, it's not just kids, but this is really important for senior citizens. It's important for all of us. But you think of the alienation there as people get old and more isolated. There's such a big space for what they can do with the arts and how they can engage. So this is what I think. I think that's why I think the arts are so important, why I'm excited about this research. And as I consume a lot of research, obviously, I see what other people are doing. And one of the things that has also been confirming for me is even though there's that debate, okay, should we look at test scores, should we look at the inherent value of the arts, or what we should look at, there's a lot of researchers out there coming up with similar findings. So I've given my talk here about the cognitive, social, personal dimensions. There's other researchers who have different lists, but they're similar. They're the same content, but a different list. There's Ellen Winter at Harvard Project Zero with the 7 habits, studio habits of mind. There's researchers in England who are coming up with similar lists. They correspond to what people call 21st century skills. They correspond with what people define as career and college readiness, and they correspond with definitions of social emotional learning. There's all kinds of gatekeepers and academic areas for all of those areas, but they're really all pretty similar, and they all are really supported by the arts. So this is important. What we're here for tonight is important, and it's important that this be a welcoming place for those kids who can meet and thrive in this environment. So that's my talk here, and we can open it up. Thank you.
So my question to you
Yeah.
is, when we look at sports versus the arts, why have sports become so crazy and so dominant that people don't even have time to attend church on Sunday because they're so busy squaring their kids around? How do we bring,
Or get your kids into college.
or get, yeah, I mean, it's just become so obsessive. Do we blame it on the culture? Do we blame it on peer pressure? Where can we go with that to make people understand that you can be both?
Yeah, well, I obviously don't have an answer. If we all knew that answer, because things are a little crazy now, with kids in college and getting enough extracurricular things and getting the application and, and for some kids, like I was saying, some kids it's art, some kids it's sports, some things it's others. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot different than when I grew up. Time is much more regimented around these things. But I can't answer why sports. I'm definitely not here to knock sports, but it is valued. There is a competitive side to that is really valued, and it's a competitive business getting your kid into college and getting the career. There's a whole lot of things that are very structured now. And I think what's nice about the arts is a chance to step back from that. It is good for college, yes, that you're participating in arts. That means a lot. If you're accomplished in the arts, you're showing you've got that discipline and that stick-to-itiveness you can accomplish. It's quite a credential. And it can be competitive at a certain level, depending on who's doing it and what the context is. But it's different. It's a different kind of competitiveness. And so, yeah, sure, I would like to see a better balance there.
Okay, so Mark, earlier you were talking about how some people view the arts as a soft road versus solid finance or what have you. But in your career, clearly the arts have demonstrated entrepreneurship and risk-taking and all these things that we were talking about.
Absolutely. I'd love to bridge from the previous topic to that topic. One thing about sports is that the rules don't change, or the rules very rarely change, right? So you operate different strategies, different plays, you learn certain skills, and they may vary, but the rules and the way the score is accumulated, it just doesn't change. And maybe life used to seem that way. Maybe when things changed a little more slowly, life used to seem that way. But today, the rules of life, the rules of competition in business, they are changing all of the time. So I'm in a business we're called DeMassimo Goldstein. I founded it, and about a year or two in, a 21-year-old sports guy named Lee Goldstein joined me, and he had his checklist and his score, and he was performing in the same way every single time, every day. And I looked at him and I said, I know you think that you're a creative person, you're a new business. Like, go out there and sell, and we'll build this agency. So it's DeMassimo Goldstein now. He did very well. But it's given me a place where I can see the difference between I was in bands, I wrote short stories, I wrote songs, I acted in school films, I started music businesses, I started computer animation businesses, I started a dance school, I started agencies, I write, I'm a creative guy, I think creatively. And when the game changes, I'm the one who brings it up.
So in a way, it's safer to be a sports guy because it's more predictable.
I think it's dangerous. I think it's dangerous to bring a sports metaphor into a world where the rules are not set and they're constantly being
But
reset.
the people who think that way think it's safer. So
Yeah,
that,
well, it feels safer. It feels
Right.
safer to feel you know the rules and all you have to do is perform, and if you perform, you'll succeed.
so Em, as a teacher,
safer.
do you
Feels-
feel
certainly feels
like the
safer.
people who go into the arts feel like it's because they have talent or because they have curiosity, or both?
It's definitely both. The thing about the arts to me, especially with improvisation in particular, but any kind of performing, is it is a completely collaborative and it is completely coeducational, which is life, right? We don't live separately from each gender, okay? And what the children get, and adults too, absolutely adults too, is they get a chance to be themselves, and that's good enough. And that to me is absolutely the cornerstone of the arts. I've worked with little tiny ones in the Wolf Trap Institute, which is a very structured program with Head Start kids where you engage them in all kinds of literacy and math and arts activities. But right now I'm working right now with maybe some of your kids, I don't know, but some middle schoolers and some elementary schoolers. And they're just happy to be there, and they're not all performers and they're not all athletes. There are so many kids who are not one or the other. They're not only a super athlete or only a super cellist or whatever. That's fabulous if that's your thing. But there are so many kids who are somewhere in the middle there who need some way to express themselves and want to feel safe. And, you know, theater is a safe place because you can be yourself. And now, obviously, I'm speaking specifically about theater. If you're doing visual arts, that's a different ballgame. But you're expressing your opinion, your views, your ideas. So I just think there's a chance to be yourself. And in our culture with all these awful screens all the time, we're getting less creative. And we really need to ramp that up because kids need to know how to talk to each other in person. You know, they're going to go to college and they're going to interact with other people. And they have to be able to do that.
And have you seen it changing over the years because of the technology? It's getting worse, they're getting less creative. How do we change that?
Yeah, how do we change that? Well, I feel like I'm as I said, I'm on a kind of a crusade. I want everyone to take improv and to do things that push their comfort a little, but also just because it is honestly, it's fun, and you can't fail. You cannot fail in improv because it's all about saying yes to whatever you're doing and just going for it.
There's no right answer.
There's no right answer, and if you say no, the scene dies, and you may as well just.
You fail.
Yeah, it's done.
Right.
There's
So-
only one rule.
That's right, yes, to say yes, yes and. Anyway, but I think that, I mean, I taught about 15 years ago, I was teaching high school in California, drama and English, high school, 9th to 12th, obviously, right? But I had drama classes of 37 kids, 9th to 12th grade, who were like this. This is an easy grade, and I don't even want to look at your face. So it was really challenging to get these kids engaged, and I didn't get everybody, because you can't get everybody, but you can get a lot of people. And a lot of kids came to my class because they couldn't find anywhere else to go. And I often had kids who were brought to me in my English classes who were real behavioral issues with their other teachers, but because I'm kind of goofy and out there, they felt like, okay, I could be myself, it's okay. And I had a boy once say to me, a 9th grader, he said, Ms. Harb, why do you always laugh so much in your class, man? And I said, well, I don't know, I guess just because we like each other, you know, and we're accepting each other. And just, a lot of these kids were at very high risk for a lot of challenges and home problems, and they were always getting pulled over by the cops because they looked like gangbangers, but they weren't. But, you know, it's really, it lets everybody have their say.
Right,
Yeah.
and brings me back to the question of, okay, so you're growing up and you're an arty guy. Were you considered like, oh, he's that arty guy? I mean, I think that's a problem that a lot of kids live with, is that they don't want to be put in that category. They want to be the cool guy on the sports team. And I think that's a problem.
I wasn't the cool guy on the sports team.
I bet
know
you-
that. I'm not.
Did it matter?
I'm not. I mean, we're talking the '70s here, and I had Tony Orlando, you know, hair and
Right.
mustache and stuff. I don't know that I was considered. But you know what? I was so into what I was doing that you know, I didn't take that much time to really worry a lot about, you know, whether I was in crowd or out crowd. A lot of that stuff kind of, you know, happened sort of out of my zone of interest. I think I also naturally sort of moved in and out of different groups because so wasn't sort of in a clique, you know, at least by the
It
time I
gives
got
you
to high school.
fluidity to be involved in
Yeah,
those
you
different
come
things.
in, you
Yeah.
go, and you improvise a little bit, and I wasn't too troubled that you know I didn't sort of have my home group or whatever. I also moved quite a bit too, So, moving was an opportunity to improvise a new, slightly better me each
New-
time I
new hairdo.
moved as a kid. And I did need improvement, as I moved from place to place.
So, Rob, can we talk about your studies where, when you were looking at kids, were there specific age groups, or was this from kindergarten all the way through?
Well, overall, with these 100 projects or whatever, it's been all ages and in various settings. For that Champions of Change, those were elementary and middle school. So, but I think the findings apply to all ages, because that would be the next question, I think. Like, well, okay, does it matter? And I
Right.
think, sure, it applies to everyone. Sure, as kids get older, skills may matter. And what's one of the wonderful things about arts is, for young kids, is that they can play with the medium. They can play with the materials, is what I meant to say. So they can work with arts materials, or they can do the improv as play, and that they could do older, but there's very little play in school. It is kind of pretty structured. So if you're going in there and you're doing improv with them, that's great, because they're getting to experiment and try things out. And so, but because of testing and the increasing demands, is more of an opportunity at younger grades to explore play.
Well, and I studied early childhood education as well as theater education, and Vygotsky, who was a big deal in early childhood education, in development, said that when children are playing, they are a head above themselves. So they rise up, they collectively bring themselves to a more sophisticated, collaborative, communicative, cooperative way. And they're just sitting in the block area making things, but they're doing all kinds of things. They're improvising. They're playing. They're doing a little play. They're sitting there performing and being someone else. And we lose a lot of that as kids get older.
See, and that's the question. So is there any age, and anybody can answer this, where people start losing that elasticity, where they feel like, I couldn't do that? And at what point does that occur?
Well, that does happen, and often middle schoolers are more conformist. In other words, they may be more open. Elementary kids sometimes more open to different kinds of arts, and then there's this kind of conformity. Now I'm generalizing, because there's plenty of exceptions, but that's the overall. But it's interesting that you said elasticity, because even though that's a phenomenon for those age groups developmentally, it doesn't mean it has to be. And it doesn't mean we can't provide other alternatives. And in fact, people can stay open. There's a lot of good research on plasticity, the different way of looking at elasticity of the brain. That is, there was a lot of attention for a while ago that there's a window of opportunity for learning reading young. And then there was that thing about music and Mozart effect. You get them in young, and your brains are going to go different, and everything will be improved. But the current research is that the brain can change at any age. That actually you can fire up the brain and create those connections and have these kind of improvements, if you're elderly or whatever the age. And so I would, yes, younger there's a lot more opportunities when kids are younger to do things, but it should never be an exclusion because of that.
Okay. Yeah, and I can also tell you that at any age, you can crash a band and just go and sing on stage. Isn't that right? Doesn't that happen to you?
Yes, I think I'm banned. The union has banned me now, but yes, I like to do that. I know you do that too. There are certain things. There are certain abilities that do seem, the development of which do seem to be bounded by age. Like, I will never have perfect pitch, and if I have a gene that would have allowed me to have perfect pitch, I missed the window now by about 50 years to develop it. And because I have developed as a musician, because I've really tried to develop my ear, it hurts me that I will never have perfect pitch, because I feel that I could hear myself better and I could hear other people better if I did, And I feel that inside of all of us, there's a human being, right? Each of us has a human being inside, and we have these senses. The eyes are the window to the soul. Well, the eyes are the window to the inside, the brain, the heart, the human being. When we develop through practicing and playing in the arts, and then if we have a brain to think about the arts as well too, I think we develop our ability to understand ourselves and appreciate our own selves with much more depth. And also, if we can do that, we can bring that to our relationships with others. Well, I'm in the persuasion business and the communication business, so it's a profession with me to try to figure out how do you connect with people and help them influence themselves to change their habits. That's the focus of my business. How do we help organizations that help people change their habits for the better? So I have a professional interest in this too, but I also feel, we all have a little bit of locked-in syndrome. We all, you know what that is? That's a terrible thing, locked-in syndrome, where folks are operating consciously inside, but they can't express themselves at all. And fortunately, science is figuring out ways to help people like that express themselves. But we're all a little locked in, the things that we have things we want to express that we don't quite have the skills to express.
But I think it has a lot to do with fear, and that fear is based in never experimenting when you're younger in the arts. And on that note,
Yeah, did I bring it down?
oh, no, not at all. I just think it's time for questions.
Oh.
Yeah, so does anybody,
To get back to the sports arts analogy, comparison, I think there's a lot to be said about producing something that you've written, something that you've painted or sculpted, or even a performance. In improv, you're yourself. In theater, you become somebody else. And it seems to me there's a little bit more, not to be hokey, but a little bit more of the soul that goes into that kind of product that you produce, as opposed to, watching the video of your great, tennis ace or a soccer goal, where, as Mark said, it's just more prescribed and rigid. So I think that there is something about the arts that does produce that contribution to self-esteem and also to individuality. And on that point, I'd just like to make one other comment on technology. I agree with everything everybody says and feels about social media and our kids, but don't write off technology in the arts. If you go into the gallery, there are a number of projects there that are collaborative, that are creative, that are lasting, some are momentary, but there's an awful lot that technology offers that can be harnessed into something creatively. And you see all these cutting edge artists working in this field, and I think it's something worth watching if you're interested in the arts, because it's not going to go away. It's a new medium, really.
it is, and to that point, I think with the sports, a lot of the success rides on ego versus real interest, and there's a difference. So.
Well, and the thing is, in the arts too, at least in the collaborative forms like theater and improv, you sublimate your ego, hopefully. Some people don't, but if you're really doing an actual performance together, you have to work with other people, and you cannot be the only star, because even that spear carrier in the back, he's just as important as you. And he's just as excited to be up on stage, and his mom and dad or whoever are just as excited to be taking their picture and saying, "Look, my baby's up there." It's how you really do have to go for the greater good, and it isn't about being a superstar. Obviously, of course, if you go to Broadway and you're going to be, Patti LuPone, yeah, okay, and that's wonderful. But she's the exception. What about the rest of us? There's so many of us who could benefit from expressing ourselves, and we don't have to be the next great actor, writer, director. It's just about being in your life and expressing things in your life. And Augusto Boal, who I'm obsessed with and who's unfortunately has passed away fairly recently, he was very into theater of the oppressed, which is a whole big movement in Brazil and elsewhere in the world. But what he talked about is that in poor countries, people were oppressed by their governments and by people outside themselves. But in our North America, in our society, we have what he calls cops in the head. We are oppressed on the inside.
That's what Mark's talking about.
Cops on the head.
Yeah, cops in the head. I guess
Whoa,
that's pretty,
yeah.
locked in.
You just
syndrome.
call it, yeah.
Lack of
Right,
skills.
cops.
That's the other side. I mean, I'm up here because of Facebook, right? Because Ann and I share a friend who lives in England, so we wouldn't, and we only know that because of Facebook. Oh, we also share, and Jill, we have a second friend too, yeah.
A lot of questions.
My wife, a fantastic artist.
Yeah, Jill, yeah, Jill.
Jill.
In back.
Sorry, yeah, I have to go to a photography show now, so I'm gonna just,
You're very artsy.
Yes.
I'm into two things, so, I came from another country when I grew up, I grew up in Hong Kong, so learning art there is a very different, I think that kids like sports because there's competition. A lot of time, when you compete with each other, you see better improvement. And I think art here oh my God, this is so fun. I think this is something we should bring to school here, that not just going to art class, you need to show, your creativity. It's like you have a science project, you have sports. And then, at Osborne, we have, ballroom dancing. And my son was like, ew, dancing. Now he got selected, he's going, all the way, like 6 boys and 6 girls. All of a sudden, he said, Mom, I want to take a dancing class. What?
Yay.
What?
Awesome.
Yay.
Totally
Awesome.
out of the blue, and I can see him that he find his passion. He's a baseball guy, all the sport guy. I would never see him going dancing. It was like just unheard of. And when I find out he's selected, I was
It'll
like,
make him a
"That's
better
just not my
baseball
son."
player.
Mm.
It will.
Absolutely.
So I think that if there's something that I would like to share is that maybe bring in some sort of competition to school about art.
What do you
No.
think, Al?
Yeah, they do exist, but maybe not so much. I don't know about here in Westchester because I'm relatively new. But growing up in Canada, we didn't have a lot of arts competitions either. But when I got older, the provinces would have playwriting competitions, drama festivals, and I'm sure you do that. I know you do that in this country too. You do drama festivals, and kids go to the different competitions. So there is some competition involved with you. If you're going to be, or if you're in a show choir,
Writing
it's-
contests,
or
for
writing
sure.
contests,
Yeah.
playwriting, Glee. That whole thing was about competitive performance. So I think that it exists, but maybe it doesn't exist enough.
But I think if you start it young.
Yes.
A lot of time, kids nowadays spend too much time on electronics.
Mhm.
They don't get, they draw stuff on the iPad. Come on, I would never let my kids just do that. I love them to pick up something like brush or anything, just, use their hand.
I don't think you can have competition. Stanislavski
Yes.
said
Yes.
to the actor, to his actors, do not try to force and push your way to the top of your profession. Do not run after distinctions and awards, but do make every effort to find an entrance into the world of beauty, which is how I try to make it happen. Because you can't compare an apple and a pear.
No, you can't. You're right.
You
You're
cannot
absolutely
do-
right.
Yes, we have the Tonys, and I've been a Tony voter, but while I'm voting, I'm saying, this is ridiculous.
Mhm.
This has no basis.
Mhm.
In reality, how can this show or this actor be better, unless each actor is playing Hamlet?
Right.
You can't
Right.
compare them.
No, you're right.
But we're selling tickets,
Mhm.
that's what it's about. But
But
that's
bring-
what I feel about competition.
Yeah, no, but I think bringing it back to more for kids and for younger people, I've never really been involved in arts competitions with younger folks, like middle school, high school, or elementary, and I feel pretty ambivalent about that. I think when you're an adult, there's a little more autonomy, and I think you've got more life experience, and if you want to be in a playwriting contest, then good on you. But I agree with you, sir, absolutely, that you cannot compare apples to oranges or to pears. It's impossible, and that's the beauty of the arts, is that you are the unique
Yep.
being, and expressing something unique.
So what if you mentioned how community arts is a collaborative social effort? And what in Rye can we do more as a community? The schools are great, they do so much art. Art has emphasis, all kinds of arts, performing arts, singing, instrumental, the conventional arts. But what can we do as a community to build that more, much like how we have sports?
Mark?
When in doubt, ask Mark.
I'm, even though I'm up here today, don't be confused. I'm here to learn about that subject as much as anybody. I do think the idea here is I think all of us here are saying we value the arts, and I think that's there's a little bit of a question out there about what does the Rye community value? What do the parents of Rye value? What's our scorecard? you know, for life and for our kids and all of that. And you do hear, you know, not just in this room, but, you know, at cocktail parties and down at the clubs, folks saying, we're obsessed with sports, we're obsessed with academics, we're obsessed with the competition. And I do like that there are values outside of the social scorecard or the sports scorecard or the financial scorecard. There are values in life, you know. I feel like athletics and being fit and being healthy and making money and putting a roof over your head and all of those things, they ought to serve something, you know, something greater. And in the arts we find greater experience of life, and maybe the opportunity to appreciate more of what life is about, to value it more. Certainly it gives us a better experience of it when we're doing it or when we're listening to it or watching it.
I do have to say that we're at the Rhinex schools, and they didn't have a play annually for the lower grades. So they brought in an outside company, and you could decide whether you wanted to pay X amount and then have your child audition, although everybody got a part. And one of my jockey kids is in that play. And I just knew because of his personality that it would be a great experience for him. And I think that was one great way for the school to decide, you know what? How are they going to know about the play? How is the guy who plays every sport going to be interested and going to break away from basketball practice to go to play practice if he doesn't learn that in third grade? And so we did make that shift. And of course the Rye Arts Center does so many great programs, and I think we're starting to nick away, but I think it's really, it starts at the top, it starts with the parents.
There's a little change in mindset, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a question, this is for Mark. Given, and you touched on it as well, the skills that our kids need to be college ready, the skills that they need to enter into a career, the kids that you're hiring, the early 20s, what are the qualities that you're looking for? And if you compare back now to the kids that are younger, what do we need to be preparing, what skills do we need to be giving our kids to be at that point? Where the game is shifting so rapidly.
There was a book that came out a few years back, and I'm sorry, I can't remember who wrote it, but it was called The Creative Class. And, you know, it talked about how creative skills, creative thinking, creative problem solving, being able to, like what you said about Vygotsky, you know, being able to rise above and sort of discern the shape of the game, and so that you could think about changing it, which is what he talked about. He talked about revolutionizing situations by stepping above them. So creative folks, designers, writers, engineer problem solvers, technology problem solvers, but also business problem solvers, finance innovators, how a creative class we're really rising in business. And you know, I'm in a lot of meetings with organizations that are talking about how to use technology, artificial intelligence, robotics, blockchain, and on, to eliminate a lot of more rational, more routine work. This is a trend that's only accelerating. And so, you know, where do humans add value? I think one thing that humans will bring to the table, even after machines can do everything better, is they will not be able to be better humans. And I think we have the human interface, because, you know, all of our end bits are human end bits. They're not machine end bits, right? So, and ultimately we measure value as human beings, right? So I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to your question, and I will summarize with a single sentence. I think we're looking for creative people, and I can tell you that people who don't make it are people who don't adjust when change hits them, and it hits them every week now. It's
All right.
Speaking about your question about increasing arts in the community, I think all of us share a passion for the arts in this room, and I'll just tout a little bit of the Rye Arts Center's programming. It has included Changing Art in Rye-Town Park, downtown art exhibits of sculpture that was curated by Bob Clyde a couple years ago. We have had a program for years and years known as the Famous Artist Docent Program, as well as Learning to Look, where volunteers are trained at the Rye Art Center to specifically go into classrooms and show kids about artists that they might not have learned about in their curriculum. And my background is public policy, so I have a specific question for Dr. Horowitz about your studies showing the success of arts in educating kids and widening their abilities to succeed. And I'm just wondering, is everyone sold on what your thesis is, or is there danger of the arts being cut, you know, specifically in New York City and further afield in the future? I know that we have a government that's might not be considered so friendly to the arts at the moment. And so these are things that I think we need to consider and think strategically about going ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's an odd dissonance out there in that area. And if you ask most people, do we think we should have arts for children in schools, they're gonna say yes. If you say, are arts important, they'll probably say yes. And at the same time, there's a lot of cuts. So the behavior of people is that it's more of a frill, that it's not essential. It goes back to what I was saying in the talk before, in terms of public conversation, there's a lot about, well, we gotta make sure we have the basics, because we have to make sure they can read and write and do math, and now STEM. Very little urgent conversation that the arts are important. So arts are perpetually cut, even though there's a great advocacy community that keeps it there. So this keeps going back and forth. I mean, I would say that part of that, which I see as this dissonance, is that because of this movement, well, we gotta make sure kids have the basic skills. A lot of that comes down on people with less opportunity. That there's a lot of schools where they will emphasize what they're calling the basics, and a lot of drilling for tests. And often the kids who are, I could say the victims of that, although there's some benefits, of course, are kids who are, have less opportunities because of economics, and that more affluent parents are more likely to make sure their kids have arts, or that they're living where schools have arts, or they go to schools. There's a whole lot of things going on there. And so that drilling for tests is somewhat disproportionate sometimes. But to get to your point, even though there's this movement, high stakes testing, we have to get back to basics, it's part of the school reform movement, employers keep saying, we want employees who can think creatively, who are entrepreneurial, who can collaborate, who can take multiple vantage points, who can deal with ambiguity. So there's clearly some kind of dissonance in the air, and that's why this meeting and all this is so important. Because I think we're still trying to make the case, why are arts so central and why are they so valuable, and especially for some, because when they can succeed in the arts and they can do those authentic tasks and geared towards the performance, they can carry that with them into the workplace, into their relationships, into all the things that they're going to do. So it is very important and very valuable to them, but still being cut and still a struggle all the time.
I am a long-term resident of Rye now, and I see my perspective changing when your children grow up, and we've got a 50-year-old child, and your grandchildren grow up, and the youngest of them is about to graduate from high school. I would say one thing important on top of all that you have said about the arts is it is important for your life and for making yourself happy, and for, I think Rye spends much time on which college you're gonna get into, and it's hard to get into any college if you come from the New York City area, but that shouldn't be so important. But our son is a musician, and my husband is an actor, and I know the joy and the beauty that that brings to your whole life. And turn around twice, you will see your children grow up and your grandchildren important. And one thing that we don't have, Jason, I was thinking as a music director of a very good choir, and he's a wonderful organist at Rye Presbyterian. One time when my son, who's 50s, was in beginning his musical career, we had choirs from the Episcopal Church and the Presbyterian Church got together, and just singing is a wonderful outlet, and it's something you do your whole life. And I think we should think about bringing our choirs together too.
Well, I think that the Rye Arts Center is fabulous about also, and Meg has done so much, in expanding the program so that they include all sorts of things that people don't necessarily even think about when they think about the arts. And might I also add that people in the arts tend to be a little bit more interesting and fun to be around.
Right on.
There are many ways in which the arts can be a very important part of the community, and that is, we see it here at the Arts Center in our Head Start students, many of whom are language delayed or have no English language yet, as they're from Hispanic families, and also people who have various disabilities from the Dance for Parkinson's program. And I think one thing the arts
Fabulous.
does, and certainly can do, is give people a means of expression that may be unavailable or not yet available to them for whatever reasons. And I wanted to also ask Eileen, who brought up the idea of arts advocacy, and Dr. Horowitz, this is really for you. It's a matter of federal policy, although there are those who would pass it off to the states. And we are arts advocates, and we are a sophisticated, affluent community. And is this something that is New York, Chicago, California cities? Predominantly, you talk about underserved communities, underserved kids who don't benefit from the arts. And how can we extend the arts advocacy to cover more people in this country?
Yeah, I mean, and this is part of the work. Yeah, I mean, it's true that New York City area is amazing. That's true. There's a lot of people here who care about the arts, and a lot of people come here because of the arts. That's all true. But the same issues are out there. I've done work in a lot of communities across the country, and they struggle more with resources and more with advocacy. But I think the issues are still there, the same, and it's a core everywhere. And in fact, they're often some of the greatest beneficiaries of federal funding, like a lot of federal funding areas, because that community arts center that might get an NEA grant or the museum or something, that's really important financial income for that area, or employing teaching artists. There's jobs there in that area and community. So there's a lot of federal funding out in the country, and people will miss it if it's cut.
Could I tangent on something, just getting back a bit to what you were saying about how can we bring the arts more in? There is another aspect of theater education, which is using theater to teach other skills. So there's interactive theater where you do scenes or plays that relate to social issues. You can use it in drug prevention. You can use it in therapy. I mean, I'm not a drama therapist. That's a separate profession. But the lines blur a little bit because when I was working with these high schoolers, I had them write a monologue, just whatever, and it had to start with, I hate this. Okay? I hate this when. And the kids just exploded, even the ones who were, doing all that. And this one boy, young man, he was 17, and he did a monologue about his abusive mother. And obviously I had to report it because I'm a mandated reporter, but he just let it all come out. And the other students were so respectful to him and so supportive of him, of going, wow.
Great.
And educational theater is really big in England. It's crazy good in England. And it's bigger in Canada, but here it's not so much because it's not just about putting on Hello Dolly. Hello Dolly's awesome and it's wonderful. My kids are musical kids, they love it, and I love it for them. But doing theater where I've done interactive stuff with lawyers or with, for sexual assault awareness trainings where you have people taking on different roles.
Were lawyers and sexual assault same
They were not the same, no. Fortunately, they were not.
Okay, just checking.
Would you sign this release?
Yeah, right now. But you can use theater to teach a lot of simulations. Any kind of simulation is a form of theater, and you can do that. And I just think I don't think there's a lot of that going on here yet. I haven't, sussed it all out yet, but I think there more could happen with that, and kids could use it to get their community service, which everybody needs and wants around here, as I'm learning, and, getting, and all this, college raw, and just having that experience of doing something creative and educational and interactive.
So first, I just want to thank you for all you've all shared, even the audience and the comments. I find them all to be very personal and inspiring. I'm really here because of my son, Charlie, who's 4. I have 3 boys, and he's the middle. And so Charlie spends a lot of time by himself, and he entertains himself. He does little monologues. He's so expressive as a kid. Like, literally in the grocery store the other day, I yelled at him for something small, and he was like, "Mom, I thought our hearts were connected. How could you do that?" He means it. He means it. And I'll come home from work, and like all the recyclables, he'll glue them together, and he'll say, "Look what I made you." And then I go into my bedroom, and he drew 10 pictures of what he thinks that looks like, and he glued them all over my walls. And I don't yell at Charlie for doing that, because he always says, "I'm artful." And that's what he says, "I'm artful." And I see in him, he is just an ease.
4-year-old.
Yeah.
He is. He has like a light around him. I mean, all my kids are great. He's just super great. He has something in him, and I think this is what it's about, because he is a little budding artist in his own way. And I am not necessarily, but I feel this sense of responsibility for making sure that I keep this spark in him. So I told him that's what he hates when I go out. It's today Wednesday, it is Wednesday. When I go out on Wednesday nights, he'll say, "Don't go." And I told him, "I'm going to learn more about art, Charlie, so I can come home and tell you about it." He was so excited. But that's just to tell you a little bit about me, why I'm asking the question personally. But what advice do you have for moms with young kids who have that in them before, as you say, it gets beaten out when they're in middle school? Like, how do we keep that light going when it's there naturally?
Well, I would say yes to as many things as you possibly can within your comfort zone and your limits. If they want to try anything, try it. And just explore, that there's that great Maya Angelou quote, which I can't remember, but it had to do with walking on a path, and if that path takes you to failure, well, then just pick another path. Just try something else. And so I know as a kid, I had multiple lessons. I was terrible at clarinet. I was terrible at cello. I was terrible at tap dancing. I mean, I just wasn't good at them. But my mom sent me anyway. And I got to experience that, and I appreciate that. And my sister's the same way. She's a brilliant pianist, but she's actually a volcanologist, and she never touches the piano anymore. But she was, really getting a lot out of that. And I think you just follow them. Just follow him and shine your light right on him, and just, you sound like you're doing just what you need to do. You sound like you already know who he is, and you're just going to, keep him safe and push him along.
But there must be some classes he can join in.
Just joined the Rye Art Center, or will be hanging around here a lot.
Excellent. For parents to be able to say, and then my kid's not going to play lacrosse. My kid's going to find something else, and that's okay. My kid is a pear. My kid's not that orange. And it's a perfect pear.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So if there aren't any more questions, sorry.
I have a different situation. My son enjoys art. He draws all the time. He's doing animation. He's learning on his own. He's watching YouTube videos, and he's taking his own tutorial. He's animating. And I keep offering him to come to Rye Art Center or other venues to learn more. But he's just happy doing what he's doing. Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
Just let him be happy.
Yes, let them
again next year.
Exactly.
Yeah, it might change later, but I mean, as a kid, I did all kinds of things. I did radio shows and things like that too, and I was a big goofball, and I never studied it until I was, much older.
But how old is he?
He's middle schooler, like 14.
I don't know. I think I'd push him a little. I might. I just have to say I have 3 boys, and one of my boys is over here learning piano. And it turns out, much to my shock, he's got some talent. And what's interesting about it is that he's a little bit on the shy side of not wanting to be, he's not Charlie, he's not with the open heart. but he's progressed very quickly, and now he's playing Scarborough Fair. And I said, if you can play Scarborough Fair while I accompany you, I'll give you $10. So, and let me
Incentives
tell you.
work. Incentives do work.
And you know what? He can play it, but he hasn't done it so that his singer is happy. And my whole point of telling you that is that I've had so much fun with Henry doing this. Aside from the fact I'm thrilled that he actually sits down and plays the piano just all the time, but that I can be a part of that. And I really, Ann knows, I mean, it's from bringing him here and saying, yeah, we are going to try it. No, you're not going to play basketball today, or whatever it is. And it really has brought out a different side of him that I didn't know he had. So I'm just throwing that out.
So,
No,
if I know is, how much do you push so that it doesn't turn him off?
Well, once you, like,
Like, what is the balance?
I think that if Henry had no talent, I would have said fine. I really would have. If he would have quit because it wasn't coming to him, or what, I wouldn't have made him miserable. So I think it's a matter of testing and
Yeah.
trying and saying there is no failure.
It's a tough answer because my son has absolutely no vocal training or theater training, and he's been in a couple of shows at the middle school with kids who have been in this community training professionally since they were this big. And I keep saying, hey, do you want to have voice lessons? Do you want to? He's 14. Do you want to have voice lessons? And he's like, he doesn't really want to. But I admit, I feel like I am going to try to nudge it in the fall, because it's like if he's going to use his voice as an instrument, he needs to learn to take care of it, because there are actual things you have to do to, there are skills, there are techniques. So I guess it really is not an easy answer.
No, but they don't know anything.
Especially in middle
So,
school,
I
they're
mean,
very
sort of
like,
our- I sort of feel like we have to show them the way a little bit, so.
Well, maybe make sure too, it's not fear that's holding him back. If he's comfortable in his own room, following tutorials, it might be a little bit
I
afraid
don't
to
think
go.
it's fear. He just feels that he can learn it himself. Like there's so much
Yeah.
material out there, and he has mastered a lot of software that I don't know about.
I think,
You know,
I think you're
So-
right.
yeah, yeah.
I think you ask him, is this something you wanna pursue? Do you wanna try it? You check in every 3 to 6 months, and if he says, no, I'm good, especially in that field, you let him be. I'm sorry to just
Well,
break.
this
Yeah.
week,
I know, but I
I've been
don't
going on
know.
for 4 years, so every time I
And he's
nudge. a little
progressing
bit-
on his own, he's doing
Oh,
great,
he's-
and if he's happy
Yeah, he's
and
happy.
feels fulfilled, he's finding a passion. That can't be taught.
Sounds like an entrepreneur. He's doing it himself. It's all right.
Maybe have them
I'm
teach
gonna kinda go all over the map here a little bit.
Oh, boy.
I don't necessarily feel like this audience here, we're kind of preaching to the choir. And that's a good thing, that's fantastic. I've been an educator for 40 years, elementary through college, and, a musician and a jock for longer. And I listen to the Yankee game on the way over, and I don't really listen to a lot of music when I'm in the car. I listen to talk radio because I kinda wanna get away from music a little bit. And we can kinda disagree on, or agree on, ego and competition and having perfect pitch or not, and some of those things. But the question to me is, and by the way, as a teacher, I am much less creative every year, because we have more testing, we have to have more data. But the question becomes, as Dr. Horowitz said, really, why is the conversation not out there? Because the statistics and the data clearly show what they show. And so, how do we convince the bureaucrats? How do we convince the bean counters? And how do we convince parents to actually be parents? And I think that's something that's kind of been mentioned just a little bit here. So I don't feel like you should, as a parent, be afraid to push a little bit. Get them the arts education. Say to them there needs to be a balance. But when I have a parent say to me as, well, my 7th grade daughter really doesn't want to play the trombone anymore, or whatever it might be, and they say it's really their choice. It really isn't. It's kind of embarrassing. And as a society, that's kind of where we're at now. When the kids walk around with their phones in their face 24/7, that's a problem. So, you were talking about technology a little bit ago. Fantastic, excellent, I use it all the time. Most of my musician friends are dumping Facebook, dumping all of these kinds of social media because the tremendous waste of time, the tremendous social negativity that's involved with it. They're finding that why bother with this? And guess who gets all your information? All the credit card companies get it. All of the people who want to steal your information. The leading places are places like LinkedIn and Facebook and other places. So, to me, it's how do we convince people in the sort of higher up places that yes, these are valuable things, and that I don't have to teach, I don't have to record tremendous amounts of data that I'm teaching someone the B flat concert scale, which has been taught since the 1600s. We do that all the time. So, and why do we have
I like doing more research, and there's a lot of things that are worth knowing. But there's a lot of evidence already that this is valuable, and people will acknowledge it if asked directly. But what you need are lots and lots of parents demanding, if there's a cut to a music program, that it not be cut in a meeting, and then they'll listen. You need a lot of people demanding it. But I don't know the answer to the bigger question is why aren't they as opposed to other things? Because parents are so, I'm generalizing, but they're rattled about their kids. They want their kids to get in good school. They're thinking about a lot of other things. But it takes that public will to motivate the politicians and the people with controlling the funds that this is important, because everyone says it's a core subject. But then if they say, well, I don't want to do it, I don't want to play the trombone, well, is it a core subject? That you do because it's your subject. So you learn the scale, because just like you learn the equation. I think that's kind of part of what you're saying. It's like, this is what we do in this subject because it's core to the curriculum. So people say it's core, but they don't act like it's core.
No, they don't really mean it.
Yeah.
Just to expand on that, if I can, to your point, I think that, I'm ruminating on what you're saying, and I think one of the things is
arts as in general, that it's just an integral part of who you are, and it really needs to be a part of everybody and be awake in each and every person and realize.
But I think we talk about that in the context of our curriculum and evaluating it. Because I think everyone in this room probably agrees with that, but back to your question of how do we get, perhaps like more people clamoring for it. I don't know, maybe if it's instead of reframing, what the benefits are, and I don't know if that always comes across, and maybe that's the challenge.
I just wanted to say on behalf of Herd and Ride, we're fully committed to providing programming that supports parents and that supports our community at large in the areas, all of which Dr. Horowitz mentioned. So we're looking to provide more community conversations just like this one. We're really hoping that this is the first of many. And there were a lot of other things going on this evening, and I think that with those conflicts, we received a minimum number of people. There were a lot of people who couldn't be here tonight simply because they had other commitments. So this conversation, we would absolutely love to continue in the fall and again maybe in the spring. We provide, again, speakers all throughout the year that sort of tap into the joy and beauty that we find within ourselves and how do we express that. And this is one way, through the performing arts, through the visual arts, through all of these things. And our programming really speaks to that. And how do we, us as parents, provide opportunities for our kids to express themselves? And so hopefully, you know, through future Herd and Ride presentations and more conversations like this, we can continue to support our programming.
Interesting, I think our.
Well, I just would like to wrap up. I love what Mark said earlier, that the arts are beyond what is for putting them over our heads, you know, providing for our families. And what Carolyn said, it's the joy and the beauty. I mean, the civilizations define themselves by their art, not by anything else. And so it's something that's not just for children, it's something for adults. It's something that everyone should have access to, because it provides contentment, it provides fulfillment beyond what the basics do. So I'm glad everyone was here tonight, and I hope we can continue this conversation.